Black Cat Lounge is sponsored by Beacon, a home for those who have a passion for filmmaking and the unusual. The Haunted Hinsdale House. Those who walk there do not walk alone. Paraware, apparel for the action-seeking paranormal investigator. Dragonfly art and soul for all of your magical, metaphysical, and spiritual needs. Mystery Control, your go-to feed for science, magic, true crime, the paranormal, and so much more. Paraniagara, one of the top rated destinations in Western New York. The Black Cat Lounge is part of the Paraflix Entertainment Network. Buddy, welcome to the Black Cat Lounge. Thank you for stopping in tonight. I got to tell you something. I have a great show. I cannot wait to talk to our guest. I am just, you know what? I'm a fanboy. I'm going to just come right out and say I'm a fanboy of this guest because of the fact that this is what, well, we're going to talk about his latest book, but his book is something that is just commonsensical, amazing, and something that I really kind of preached for a long time. But before we get to him, I want to again go and welcome one of our newest sponsors that are coming up now is Dark Moon Press. Dark Moon Press is your central location for what else? Books on the occult, true crime, all sorts of darker subjects. But I love them. I actually do. And you know what? So many of the books are just very, very interesting. So check out, they have a great catalog. So anyway, how are you guys doing? The heat up here in Western New York is destroying everything. I am not a person that can take the heat the way I used to, and I don't like to go out in it if I don't have to. I think that comes from like, what is it? Let's say, forget how many, 30 some years of 30 some years of asphalt work. So when it comes to heat, I don't mind going out in the heat. I just don't want to be out in the sun. And that's pretty much the way that I think of it. But anyway, guys, we have a great show. And let me just tell you something. I've known this gentleman for a while, but this book is a book. There we are. This is a book that every paranormal investigator or just someone who is interested in the unusual should go and buy. This book is amazing. It's amazing. I read it in 2 days. It's really a great book. You can see that I've got all my marks. I do nothing. I do always highlight my books because of the fact that I don't care about reselling a book. I go and I make sure that if I'm going to get a great book, I want to make sure it's highlighted so I can always go back and I can figure out what else is going on there. I love this book. I love it. So anyway, let me bring out our guest tonight. You know, he is a sought after speaker. He really is a podcaster, author. He's a demonologist, which he has helped me on a couple cases. He's a paranormal investigator who has a unique way of looking at the paranormal and all of the unusual and all the stuff that we kind of take for granted. James is also the past New England supervisor for the Parapsychological Research Group, he's appeared on countless network TV shows, streaming. I mean, he's so sought out for podcasts. I mean, he's amazing. He's amazing. And he has written 2 books. First of all, this book, The Psychological Dimensions of the Paranormal. Excellent book. And a second book, because he is a demonologist, we are talking about the history of demonology. So without further ado, let's not go and let's not waste time. Let's bring out the one, the only guy with great hair, James Annitto. James, how are you, brother? Good to see you.
Very
And yeah,
good.
dude, you always, every time I see you, your hair just gets thicker and more luxurious,
My
man. I don't
luscious
know.
locks, like
I don't
Fabio.
know. I think I definitely think that there is something magical that goes on. I think you have a mirror up in your attic, like Dorian
Mirror,
Gray.
mirror on the
But
wall.
it's true. It's true. You always, I'm telling you, you get younger every time I see you. So that's a great curse to have. We
Yeah,
all have curses.
good
My
genes, I bet.
Yeah, well, my jeans, they're worn out. My jeans are well worn out. Jim, let me ask you something, man. This book is truly amazing. And and like I told you, I read it, I read three-quarters of it until I couldn't read. When I started it, I didn't put it down, and my eyes, I couldn't even see anymore. I went and I I put it down. I went to sleep. I woke up, and right after breakfast, I started reading this again. I went back a chapter because I wasn't sure if I missed anything. I
Yeah,
had a little fog brain. But this book is great.
thank you.
What brought you to the point of you actually sitting down and writing this? Was there a root cause? Because I'm gonna ruffle some feathers after you give me the answer. Not your feathers, other people's feathers.
So yeah, there was a reason I wrote the book. For one, it's a topic that most people don't associate with me, so it took me out of my comfort zone, made me do lots of research, and also, kind of put standard facts out there most people misconceive of the paranormal. But I had a lot of early childhood trauma, not
Hmm.
hauntings, but like actual childhood trauma,
Right.
and so I've always been interested in the realm of psychology. And so I love early philosophers. Philosophy kind of felded into science. So I just was always interested in that stuff, but I was
Hmm.
always interested in the paranormal, the unknown, the unexplainable. And so I most people know I am, and actually just got my bachelor's of psychology not too long ago, and I am 4 classes out getting my master's in
Wow,
psychology.
that's
So
congratulations, because that is not an easy thing to do.
So really the book kind of stemmed from a research I was doing for Southern New Hampshire University for a class, research methods. And my thought was, is there a specific personality type or uh, critical skill level where more people tend to believe in the paranormal? So I had a great research study. It's actually still active through SNHU.
Hmm.
I haven't looked at the data in a long time. I've been so busy, but it's still out there. You still can take the survey, and it takes Tyvek's paranormal scale, which looks at believability with certain cultures and certain types. But yeah, so
Hmm.
that research and just my interest of the paranormal and psychology, and the uneasiness of writing something different than what most people know me for is what kind of made me write this book. And I poured a lot of love into it in the sense
Yes, you
that
did.
there's no bias, like there's none of my opinion in there. As I tell most people, I walk a middle gray line between skepticism and belief. And when you read the book, you're gonna take your own opinions from it, or I've had even people tell me that they've questioned their experiences, and it made them think about the past and how they thought of things. So
See,
that's what I wanted to write about it. Yeah.
that was the important thing. I think the biggest plus of this book will be for most people who are passionate about the paranormal or investigating or whatever. It makes you question. It makes you really try to understand
Yeah.
why and how things actually work and what can be misconstrued. Because now here comes the caveat. Remember, I warned you beforehand, so we're not going to make. I'm not going. This is my opinion, not James. Most paranormal investigators are enamored with pretty lights and buzzing and things that may not be exactly real,
Yeah.
paranormally real in that type of setting. I think that there's only a small percentage of true investigators who sit down and really take the time to look at the client's set and setting, educational background, spiritual work. I mean, your religion, culture. Very few ever do that because why? They're in such a hurry to get in there and go woo woo. Let's see if we can get the lights to flash. So, okay, there's my TED talk. Everybody, don't send me any emails because I won't
Well,
answer them anyway.
I want to agree with that. I do want to agree with that, though, not to take all the flack from you, but truly, yes, a lot of people like it's the nighttime, the bells and whistles, and I think some of us at some point were as well. But I think why I think of these things different, and you probably as well, because you've been around for a long time doing this. You've seen, it kind of evolve over time. But a lot of people don't understand that I have a technical background. Like in high school, I went to Votech. I was in Cisco
Hmm.
networking. I actually have associates in computer programming. So I love the technical aspect of it. So and I use a tool, and I also now and for over 13 years have worked in HVAC, mechanical, plumbing. So I use a lot of tools, and I ask a lot of questions, and I work with electricians, and I ask them questions of why things maybe work, or I do my own research. So
Hmm.
I don't put a lot of that credence to a lot of those things because I know the true technical formulas behind it and how it works. And so yeah, don't get me wrong, and to defend people, I do a lot of public events, or have in the past,
Hmm.
where I was raising money for a location and those tools were accessible, because they're hobbyists. They're there for a good time. You can't promote that good time. You can't say a ghost is
Exactly.
going to appear, but you're there to engage them and make them interested, but also educate. But also at the end of the point of the day, what the whole point of the event is, raise money for that location. And any event I've ever done public wise for locals or even further, I've donated all my proceeds to them, because it's like it's a great place to educate, great place to acknowledge history. But some of these people are just antiquated to these bells and whistles because they see
Hmm.
them on TV.
So my biggest problem, especially, and I mean, we're kind of concentrating on this before we jump into something that's really important. Uh, I think the biggest problem is most people don't realize what these devices actually do and how they actually work and what are the different things. You know as well as I do, when we start talking about audio or anything that's frequency based, you have to worry about accidental antennas. You have to worry about,
Yeah,
is your microphone, are you getting false positives because of your microphone? Are
yeah,
you picking up radio waves? Are you picking up somebody's echo in two rooms over? This is all stuff that people don't realize. And the
yeah,
same thing with the K2s or whatever else is the proximity pods and that.
yeah,
The problem is they just don't understand them, and if you don't understand them, then you can't use the tool it
yeah,
correctly. It's like starting up a chainsaw
yeah,
and hold the bar while the chain is moving. You know what I mean? It works. There's a reason for it to work,
yeah,
but if you don't do it properly,
yeah.
it's not going to do it.
And working in the HVAC industry, I'm not saying I'm the utmost expert in that at all, but the thing is with like temperature changes and stuff like that, like if a room's 60 degrees, 70 degrees, 80 degrees, and I'm usually around 98, 97, 99.
Mm-hmm.
If I walk in a room, I'm creating temperature change in that room, for one, creating microstatic electricity buildup. There's so much with your being that you change the environment and can set off tools like EMF meters. We use them in low voltage, high voltage, which is
Right.
also called line voltage, but
Right.
they're using stutters, right? You turn it on for a
Mm-hmm.
split second,
Mm-hmm.
see if it ticks, then you shut it back off. Because if you just leave it going, yes, it'll stay steady for one, but it's also going to dilate and changes based upon other things happening in the environment. But people don't realize this, and it's not a lack of maybe them not wanting to know it, but they get so giddy and gullible to the entrapment that everything's a ghost. Because unfortunately, as I kind of write in the book, that open-ended wise, is that
Yes.
more people want to jump to the paranormal than maybe natural explanations, because for some reason it's easier to conclude that than maybe something naturally happening, which is as well crazy, right? How the environment works around humans and how all the things work. To me, that's unreal and crazy as well. Like the people that actually ever created that stuff, to me, that's like abnormal and unexplainable. It's like I can't even believe they thought that. So that's
Right.
interesting too. But I don't know why people want to jump to that more so than anything. But maybe I do get it. You know?
I get it. I get it because of the I want to be thrilled.
Mm,
I think it's basic human nature that people
yeah.
want to be scared. It's something that it was is so inherent within us that we go ourselves because we no longer have to worry about that saber-toothed tiger running up our ass to
Yep.
go and be its meal instead of us trying to go and get a water buffalo that should be our meal.
Yep.
So I think that it's something that inherently that we crave that
Yep.
because for whatever reason,
Yep.
uh, we need that. It's part of our psyche. It's
Yeah.
part of our
Fight or flight.
internal. Yeah,
Yep. Fight or flight. Yeah, it's adapted with
exactly.
us through since we were troglodytes. You know.
Exactly. Now, Jim, let's get on to the point. The psychological dimensions of the paranormal. Excellent book. I recommend it. People who really paranormal investigators do need to read this book. They really truly do. And first off, let's talk about how important it is to know the background of the person that you're working with, the client. For years, I've always said my big statement, Jim, has always been: don't believe anything that a client tells you, but use everything that they say as a guidepost or as a reference.
Yep.
So, how important do you think it is that the investigator turns around and really, takes the time to properly interview the client?
Yeah, so like a perfect example, I actually had a interview with a client last night. So usually I start off with a questionnaire, probably like 4 or 5 pages worth of questions.
Hmm.
What are they thinking that's happening? What are their belief systems? Do they see a psychiatrist? What medications they're taking? I read that, and then um, if I feel comfortable, and most of the time I feel comfortable, I will reach out to them. Most of the time I will reach out to them, even though I might think something like a red flag popped up. But I will
Hmm.
then call them, go over the questionnaire, ask more questions in depth to certain ways they answered it, to
Right.
try to like have them speak about it. Not like I never in my mind want to put the paranormal in their head. Like I ask them questions of like, do you think it could be that? And then they
Hmm.
explain that they did this or that. So that's kind of my process. And then if I feel like it's something I can't work over them with the phone on, then I will personally go there free of charge and say prayers or bring a priest with me for a blessing or do
Hmm.
the blessing myself if nobody's available. Um, and maybe observe and then stay in the house for a little bit, kind of see them. I learn about their culture, like about their family unit. Is there a lot of infighting? Is there like ADHD issues, maybe autism, things like that? Why they're on certain medications? What's like if they have depression and I see a medication that has something to do with depression,
Exactly.
anxiety, I ask them
Yeah.
about it. If they claim that they had a haunting when they were a child, I elaborate on it to a sense. So yeah, I try to really go into so many details. Sometimes, like I say to people, it will get personal, and sometimes you will feel uncomfortable. But I need to know certain things because if a husband and wife's fighting in a house and they're supposedly dealing with this activity, that's strife. If you can't fix that strife, you might never be able to actually ever fix that haunting that's in place. And I'm not saying we're fixing how it works. That's debatable, and anybody can explain the ways of why
Right.
it happens.
Right.
But if you are trying to alleviate of them of this affliction or this issue, you kind of have to hit the physical and mental roots too, not just the spiritual.
Now, here's the big thing that I found that really drives people crazy. When you start doing, and you've done it, you've studied comparison religions and all that. Have you found that perhaps there are certain things cross culturally that are the same that can be that can be more related to the psychology of the person through trauma.
Yeah, there could be a dominance in that for sure. The one thing that I love to note is that if you look at every culture from east to west, north to
Right.
south, there are so many more similarities than differences. I
Agreed.
think we look at the differences more because it's more exciting to understand why they're different and why they think something. But sometimes when you have a conversation with these people, you're actually a
Hmm.
lot more similar than you actually thought you were before you judged the book by its cover. Even religions, monotheistic, polytheistic, I'd say with most polytheistic religions or beliefs, there was a supreme creator or something that
Hmm.
created them, that
Agreed.
pantheon or whatever.
Agreed.
So there's so many similarities, even from the way we might eat certain foods, or to even our belief systems, or how we invoke art or music. So I definitely think it's important, and I definitely think I'm trying. I think I'm getting away from your question, but it's important to look at that stuff and know that culture when you're working with that person, or even like kind of looking through at it as a lens, right? Of
Hmm.
like, why are they dealing with it this way? And is my religion better than their religion? Like I told most clients, and maybe my Catholic badge will be taken away from me. But I will always tell clients that are another belief system, I can get the process started, but I'm going to get a religious leader that you can use that follows your beliefs, because you're going to feel more comfortable with them. If I come in your house saying, "In the name of Jesus," blah blah blah, and you don't believe in that, it's like an oxymoron sometimes. I'm not
I
saying it
agree.
can't. I'm
I
not
agree.
saying it can't work, but there's a likely chance that it won't work.
Agreed. 100%. And this is something that people, again, the problem is we're living in a Judeo-Christian, I will say, the illusion of a Judeo-Christian society. And that's the problem, because too many people do not go and take into consideration that we have there. I mean, people, most of the Christian uh, investigators that I know have no clue about who the jinn is or what
Hmm.
the jinn
Yeah.
represents. Or likewise, even pagans. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to be able to, and Satanists and all that, you've got to be able to go and be
Yeah.
cross-referential, because otherwise you are going to go and you're going to do a disservice to these people. Now, let's talk about the effect of the spiritual, let's say the spiritual culture upon someone who is actually feeling that either their location is haunted. Or here, before we jump into that, let me ask you this. I love this question. I just got asked this one the other day. Okay, James, what do you think? Do you feel that the location is haunted, or do you feel that the person is haunted, causing the location to be haunted?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's both, to be honest with you, because I think echoes could be left behind, tethered through emotion or traumatic events, and those echoes can persist. And maybe if there's a purgatory or purgatorial spirits, and that is earth, maybe they linger, waiting, or maybe this is hell. There's many theories on that. To be honest with you, but
Hmm.
I also think that I reference Charles Dickens a lot with one of his pamphlet novels, The Haunted House, before he actually started writing like books, or actually
Right.
during while he's writing books. But
Yes.
he wrote for a pamphlet series. In The Haunted House, he said the house isn't haunted, is the person that is haunted that enters the house that makes it the haunted house. And I think that I gravitate towards that because there might be something there, an echo. But as I have always said, or most of the time I've said, that we are the battery, the conduit. So we take that haunting within us and we permeate and activate that echo sometimes, so that there's that relation where we kind of
Hmm.
enter that, where whatever's lingering there can feel our emotions, our trauma, and that can spark that activity. And some people just bring their baggage, and that's what surrounds that place and sometimes stays there,
Hmm.
depending on certain scenarios, and that's also debatable. But yeah, I think it can be both. I think I lean towards more so the person being haunted, and
Same
activating that
here.
haunting. But I've seen it both ways, but I think the person is the enigma to this in some form of fashion without making us so important. But yeah, I think it has something to do with that with us. I always make a joke. Where's the ghost dinosaurs? You know, the only time spirit animals are ever really noticed or seen are maybe loved ones animals or
Right.
somebody that
Correct.
had that emotional connection to that
Correct.
animal.
Yeah.
Horses, and I've heard some weird things on the USS Salem. I did hear, I forget what kind of animal. Oh, it was a pig, but they did bring animals onto the ship during the earthquake where it was servicing. So that's interesting, but is that a residual like traumatic energy that incorporates the pig, and how that happens in the ethos and how it occurs is still fascinating to me. I have speculation with certain materials or water ley lines, as we talked about earlier, but there's maybe certain enigmas around us as well, including us, that activates and allows these things to happen.
I always say right person, right place at the right time.
Yeah.
When it's a perfect combination, it's the perfect storm. The next thing you know, everything blows up. Now, let's get into a little bit of your research into uh, neuroscience and to production of. Now, before I want to just clarify something. Both of us, James and I, have done hundreds of cases, and both James and I have gone to locations, to places, and have sat there and have gotten nothing,
Yeah.
no activity whatsoever. Yet the person, the client, is trustworthy. They've got, if you look for any kind of recommendations, you're looking for, they're like saints. You don't even think twice about it. These are people that you would give $1 million to and say, hold it till I get home. And they would do it. But yet, somewhere in their psyche, they are now seeing shadow people. They're hearing voices. They're seeing things disappear. Movement is a big thing,
Yeah.
or the A port or D port of things, of items within their location that may not be exactly paranormal. So my question is, after that long setup, James, what can cause this in a person's own psyche to have this happen?
Yeah. Let's make sure it's not schizophrenia, of course, at first,
Right, right,
but I do believe in some realms of parapsychology, and I do think sometimes that we talk about some of these names, egregores, tulpas throughout time,
right.
poltergeist. I do
Mm-hmm.
feel like sometimes when we really are focused on something being there, that the human mind is powerful. It really, truly,
Agreed.
honestly is, and we haven't released. We hear that we haven't released the full potential of it. It's kind of hearsay. A lot of people, a lot of scientists say that's not true, but it is capable of a deep processing. Neurotheology has saw through brain scans that when people pray, there's a part of their brain component that fires off. Um, it's interesting how that is the pineal gland, the third eye, the Hindus really
Mm-hmm.
was populated on that. We thought for a long time that gland was a dead gland until we realized, I think it was in the 50s, that actually releases melatonin, which is
Yes.
makes you comfortable and peaceful.
Yes.
And when
Yes.
most people go on trances or communication, they're in a peaceful state. Makes a lot of sense. But I think also projection is possible when somebody believes so much something is happening within their confines of their psyche. It can project and emulate. And the only reason I really honestly agree with this is, for psychology people, or even maybe non-psychology people, there was an experiment called Stockton University experiment, the jail circumstance where he
Yes.
imprisoned them,
Yes.
and he had people play prisoners and guards, and the guards had a power trip, but it made it seem so real. And that's really the Stanford prison experiment. But it really was an unethical study, and early in my time of
Hmm.
doing this, I did unethical study on a friend, and basically kind of did like the Philip experiment with him and made him believe something was there. And I there was no way nothing ever happened on that property. There's historically, the grandfather did pass away there, but maybe not necessarily passed there, but passed in the ambulance, had his first moment there. But logically, I could be wrong, but we went couple times. We made him believe things were happening. We were doing knocks and bangs, and oddly enough, like sometimes later, we heard knocking outside of maybe the floor wrapping. Once you vibration on wood, it sometimes takes a while to make sound. So doors opening, when they were actually latched, and there's no way that it was unleveled, where it would unlatch and then open. So things started happening like that, and even on the digital recorder, which you have to always be cautious of. But we did hear, you know, two women talking that were pretty close in distance in how it was picked up. So for it to be outside, it would possibly could happen, but
Hmm.
likely less chance of it being that vibrant of a sound. And we heard two women talking on the recorder. So certain things like that started happening where women never died there historically. That was built there in that land. No signs of Native American deaths that are known in that area. Could have been, but but that activity started happening after a period of time of making him believe in it, where we started all experiencing it ourselves. And the only reason I, talk about that unethical study, and I am a piece of crap for doing that, but it really opened me up to understanding like it is possible. It's not just theory or perception. It's like this can happen. And Philip experiment's another great experiment to talk about when it relates to that as well.
The Philip experiment, just to let everybody know, Philip experiment was where a group of investigators, they up in Canada, they had wanted to make a thought form with a personality. And so they meditated for like a year and nothing happened. So they went back to table tipping. And table tipping, for the most part, I believe, is idiomotor response. That's pretty much what it is. But where the answers come from, who knows? And they created a personality, a whole bio for this entity that they were creating this thought form for. And eventually, through the table, through wrappings and all that, it started to correct the bio. So where does this come from? And I often think, James, I often think that a lot of this is, yeah, okay, a lot of it's idiomotor response, a lot of it can be explained, but in our own psyche, in our own head, I believe if we take that belief system to an upper deck and you get a group of people that take it to that upper deck, you can just have one person that really is 100% into it, and then the group dynamic takes over.
Yep.
And that's where I think a lot of what we have to do is so we have to be so careful of, because
Yep.
the group dynamic is deadly in the paranormal, because one person farts and everybody else smells a demon. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That's the problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of great, and I talk about a couple actually in my book, the first book, about mass hysteria cases,
Yes,
and
yes.
they're famous for that. There's the ones that of the singing girls in the school and all that stuff, and I of course
Hmm.
talk about the case of Ludon, the nuns, and so Lodon, but the nuns and getting a priest killed because they thought he was hexing them and all that stuff. So yeah, mass hysteria we have to be careful of that in the paranormal.
Exactly. Now, I mean, okay. Now, in several of the cases that you've examined and the ones that you've experienced, how much? What would you say the percentage is of someone who is self haunted? And self haunted by
Yeah.
I mean is that I can't say that this person is not seeing this stuff or experiencing this stuff, but yet there's no proof, there's no evidence, nothing would, I have to be a show me guy. And a lot of
Yeah.
people, that's the biggest problem with paranormal investigators, because they automatically take whatever is told to them as Bible. And you have to, how many people, how many, what kind of percentage do you think that is
Oof.
self-haunted because of either trauma, because of a medical problem, medicine interactions, uh, epilepsy, which I thought was phenomenal that you actually mentioned that in the book, because that's happened to somebody I know, and or hallucinations. I mean, it's amazing. So what kind of percentage? I'll listen. I'll just jump right out there and I'll say 70% on my case. you know,
Yeah, I was actually thinking around 75%. I didn't want it to be too harmful, but yeah, I'd say 75%, 25% probably um actual cases, but in that 75% too, there was probably natural explanations
right?
beside self hauntings as well. Maybe them thinking that something was happening.
Yep,
A lot of people don't understand the house you live in and the age of it can do a lot of physical and mental changes to you. Feeling
correct.
uneven floors, certain drafts with infiltration of air in old houses. There's a lot of things, a lot of natural explanations that
Well,
can
there's
be
so many.
adhered. But yeah, self projection in the sense of maybe actually creating something or thinking something's there. Yeah, probably I would say 75%, 75%,
Now, a
100%.
lot of times, now I having worked in a hospital and worked in an ER and done some work that way. Uh, Near death experiences. I know people that have had them. And I have to say that these are, again, the most trustworthy people. And there is seems to have a a similar effect, And what I loved about in your book, again, you can always tell I like a book when I have when it's dog eared and I have all this stuff on it. You put in there in terms of pure neurology, perhaps as a result of oxygen deprivation, surrogate surrogate neurotransmission, all leading to vivid hallucinations and altered states of consciousness. That to me says so much, because of the fact that I always believe that the brain, it was dying. So as parts of your brain die, you are experiencing different things until the point where only your hearing is left. Do you feel that something similar, not to that greater extent, can actually happen to a person who is actually going through the throes of, let's say, possession or a temporal attempt? Do you think that that's possible?
What the near death experience or being an altered consciousness. Um,
Both. I'll just throw both at you.
Yeah, so to me, in my opinion, when it comes to possession, the physical body remains, the consciousness is kicked out, either
Right.
if it's spiritually or psychologically. And, depending on what level of possession it is, and how the prayers or exorcisms are going or whatever rituals are done based on belief, might start bringing that consciousness back in to fight that
Right.
outer external consciousness. So they might be able to experience something out of body, but a lot of the possession cases, they don't remember anything. So nothing ever comes back to them. Maybe it's something that gets locked in on the spiritual realm of consciousness. Um, you know,
Or it could be a physical
yeah.
charge.
Physical lock. A lot of people lock their traumas away and forget
Right.
about it. So, yeah, it could possibly be that. As far as near death experiences, I know a lot of people have cited, unfortunately, news articles on it, and the research isn't. It is fascinating of what people experience, but a lot of them have been denoted. People have posted about when people die, they flash this imagery and it shows them coming out. A
Right.
lot of that's unfortunately been actually faked.
Yeah,
So
I
it's really
agree.
it's really a lack of thereof of that ever being done. But there is some interesting brain studies that have been done, like analysis and stuff about people dying and how the mind activates, and a lot of people will see family members or feel like they're experiencing
Right.
something, and then
Reaching
they
reaching
come back and
forward. Yeah.
yeah, come back and they remember it, you know,
Yeah.
because in most cases it wasn't traumatic, right? It was actually enlightening that my family's there, like, like I'm going to a better place depending on what occurs. I've heard nightmare stories as well, but a lot of those cases are the fact that they're peaceful and kind of. A lot of people, like they say, they're coming towards the light. So, but then they come back because their physical body and their mind is able to activate, blood gets back to the
Hmm.
brain and, the heart starts pumping. And then they remember these things because it's not traumatic. They didn't lock it away.
Do you feel that too many of the clients that we work with are too overly influenced by everything in our society today? And by everything in our society, TV, all the horror movies, the paranormal, how many decades of paranormal shows have been on? Do you feel that they've been overly just pablum fed, and that now has created almost a false belief system, a fraudulent belief system, because they believe everything is, you know,
Yeah,
external.
yeah, well, we can see through human culture we have be desensitized to certain things. Like, in the 70s, 80s, it was sex, and before that, it might have just been thought, philosophy,
Hmm.
women speaking up. Why they were called witches, and then hung and burnt in Europe and stuff like that. So we see cultural changes throughout time, and in this society, we're open to social media. We have
Right.
influencers that talk about certain things and over uh, make something that could be real more entertainment filled. And so, yeah, I think society can be swayed by that. I don't think it always leads to them being possessed. Of course, watching a horror movie, you're not going to get possessed. Um, you know, uh, so it's like, yeah, more people are. You think about it, like the number one horror franchise is The Conjuring. What
Hmm.
monetary value? And then look at how Obsession just did, and The Back Room. So people are fascinated on these subjects of the supernatural. Pop culture icons have been brought into the paranormal. Like people talk about Slender Man and the Dybbuk box and all that stuff. All pop culture creations that really become a part of the paranormal, or where normal average day Jills and Joes
Hmm.
know about it because they see it on a movie or they see it on YouTube, or they watch a TV show. And yeah, I think it can impact and kind of meld and build into society where they're more believing of it. Growing up, at one point this was all taboo and it was hush
Oh
hush.
yeah.
You
Oh
kept it
yeah.
to yourself. Maybe brought it to your church or brought it to somebody that many, not the many, the few people that actually were doing this at those time frames. But yeah, so yeah, it does it has and does still make an impact to this day, unfortunately. We like we talked about with the bells and whistles, that is also an impact. Most people know what
Hmm.
a K2 meter is and what a spirit box is and all that stuff. Like I know people that aren't into the paranormal but have heard of it because they've seen it, or there are even games on it called like Phasmophobia now, that make kids implicit of it and then build them into that societal norm as
Yes.
well.
Yes. Now, let me ask you this. This is kind of a question that I get a lot, because the collection that I have. Uh, I'm not as bad as the old man Zaffis there, Johnny, but it's overgrown. It's shelving here. I don't have a single problem with anything.
Yeah.
Same thing with me going into a affected house or whatever. I never have a problem. Never had a problem. I don't do any ritual. I don't do anything. In your opinion, is it because, even though I was brought up Roman Catholic, is it because of the spiritualist philosophy that I have? So it's like we spoke before the show. The late Raymond Buckland, whom I knew, told me that so you believe, so it is, and that's basically my whole philosophy. So, do you think it's the mindset of the individual? Because let's face it, how many people do you know that contact you, James, and says, "I stopped at this place and I got an attachment"?
Mm.
I have yet. I've in all the years that I've done this. What is over 35 years I've done this. I've gotten one attachment, and that was because of my own ego. So, do you think that it's the mindset behind what we do, the discipline, and again, the culture behind us, the belief system, the spiritual, our spirituality? Do you think that is what controls externally what goes around us?
Well, Carl Jung theory of collective unconsciousness is a very interesting viewpoint on that with cultural and transitioning. Um, But yeah, I think it can be. I think maybe certain cultures experience different things, as we loosely talked about. I think that cultural norm, those traditions, we are a Judeo-Christian
Hmm.
country, yeah, with Western ethics and morals that stem from a lot of that, and that impacts us on how we view things and how we might experience things or how we might be misinformed with what we're calling something. So yeah, I think it does have a huge impact on that. And if people don't know what the collective unconsciousness is, go look it up. It's fascinating.
It
A
is.
lot of the
It
lore
is.
and the myths that are intertwined in people and how it get passes, how it's actually in us. I think that has a lot to do with it, with archetypes and stuff. There's a lot behind the scenes that might make that happen. I don't necessarily believe this theory, but I had a theory at one point is, and taking the human being out of important, um what are, if we are the people, like, once again, are the haunted people or haunting
Hmm.
itself, and if enough people believe to mass create this, did we create these things over time? And if we had a time machine, we could see how people kind of viewed the belief systems back then. We see that adaptation
Agreed.
from,
Yeah.
Samaria, and Mesopotamia. And we see a lot of cuneiform writing, first known writing, and we can see how it has developed. And you know so it has that impact as well. Since we've moved from Africa, we have made environmental impacts on how we view things as well,
Yes. Yes.
which is fascinating. So there's so many things going on that impact us, and that maybe makes why we experience certain things. Um, so it's interesting. It's a deep question to answer. I think
But
we
it
could
is.
talk 5 more hours about it, but yeah, no, I kind of loosely what I think about it. Yeah,
Now I did get a message while we were chatting, and we have a listener from Perth, Australia, which I'm so thrilled
that's
to
awesome.
see you. Wants to know your opinion on shadow people. Are they truly is there are they truly there, or is it something else? Is it our eyes, or is it maybe our brains trying to make up for something? So she'd really like your opinion on that.
Yeah, so I actually know Mike Ricksecker very well, and I always look at him as the guy that talks about, or used to before he's Egyptian switch, but
Right.
he used to talk a lot about shadow people. Actually, wrote some great books about it.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah.
And I sat down with him, and I have a theory on shadow people. I think one, it could be eyes adapting, and the brain creating resemblance in the environment. But I also think that if shadow people do exist in the spiritual form, where it could be demon or even positive or neutral, is that if how, and I'll use energy, the word energy loosely, because we don't know how to transcribe if something does happen, what it's using in the environment or how it's manifesting. But I feel like shadow people can be observed if it is true phenomena, if they have a lack of something, if that
Right.
lack of energy, that lack of aura, ethos, whatever they need to appear, molecule, particle, whatever.
Hmm.
But sometimes that they can only appear in that form because they can't get back to their full characteristics of a true apparitional form. Why I say demons tend to, in most famous cases, tend to appear as a shadow person is because the fact that they were always non-corporeal.
Right.
Most of them, the fallen angels, jinn, the list can go on. Azoras, were always all non-corporeal entities, so they're pure spirit form. So the way that they appear to people throughout time and throughout how they've been adapted might be necessarily how they appeared in their psyche or how it wanted to appear to them. But I think that if normally they would be caught as shadow people because the fact that they were non-corporeal, so they never really truly had a physical body, and that's why they appear in the shadowy, uh, very tall form. And so I'm nuanced on it. I think a lot of it's the mind creating, but I think in true situations it could be those things,
Hmm.
those characteristics that I laid out. I could be wrong, but that's my leading theory. And from my personal cases, what I have experienced to be true. And I'm not saying it's fact, but what I've experienced leads me to lend towards that theory.
Now, James, whoops. Now, James, we're running out of time rapidly. Tell everybody where they can get this excellent book and all your other books. And I do have up your website. I encourage everybody to go to his website, but I encourage everyone who is really has got a deep sense of wonderment when it comes to the human brain, the way things work. And James, congratulations,
Thank you.
because and it's so funny because I go and I say, you know, you dumbed it down for Tim Shaw because I understood everything that you wrote. It's so wonderful. Where can they get the book?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, which is down below, jamesannitto.com. There is a link called book, tab called book on my webpage. That will lead you both to my books. It's on Amazon. So if you just want to go to Amazon, not go to my webpage, search up my name, it'll automatically come up. And yeah, that's how people can get my book. That, like you said, I have a second book, The History of Demonology. And that came out in April. Um, yeah, April. And so, yeah, if people are interested in my book, I also do a podcast once a month with demon folklorist Victoria J. She
Mm-hmm.
has a master's in folklore, and we take a deep dive into different realms of demonology. Our first episode was June 6th, 6/6/26. We had John Zaffis on, where we talked about the introduction to demonology. And our next episode is next Tuesday, the 7th, at 8:30. So hopefully we're not competing too much because it'll be a half hour after,
Mm-hmm.
into your show. But we will have Kyle Cobb on, talk about the history of demonology, and then we have a laundry list of guests lined up for once a month.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. So
Phenomenal. James, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on today. And I want you to stay on the line so I can thank you properly. And again, it is just an honor to have you on again. And it's every time I talk to you, I learn more and more and more. You know,
thank you.
now I'm gonna have to, I don't even want to tell you this, but I have to go and I have to go look at all my old college books and my old psychology books, and I'm gonna have to dig out Jung, and I'm gonna have to go and I'm gonna have to start reading him again, just because it's now everything that you said, it just spurred so many memories. So
Yeah.
thanks a lot, James.
Thank
Like
you
I
so
don't have
much.
enough else. That's what you
I
do best.
appreciate it, brother.
Thank you. Hold on the line, my friend. Hold on the line. James is phenomenal, and I really highly recommend his podcast. I recommend his books, and he's helped me countless times on some rather difficult and tricky information, cases that I didn't know enough about. So James is a phenomenal person, and really just you can tell he's just got a lot of passion for what he does. He's a great person. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for being here hanging out with me. And like I always tell you, like I tell everybody else, you know what? Take your time, be kind, try to do some good works for people. Kindness doesn't cost. It doesn't cost. So, guys, take care. We'll see you again. Bye bye. You guys are the best. And remember, see you next week. Bye bye.